Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
It's always, I find something really touching about our community coming together, about, I know the effort that goes into creating a pop-up Zendo, um, and I was just really appreciating people's practice and what it takes to arrive here today and all the things that you've had to leave behind for the day. So um, I'm really grateful for that. And just in case you haven't been in a kind of pop-up Zendo like this one, we have the altar here, but we also have at the side there what's often called the memorial altar. And the intention is to kind of hold people who have passed, who you want to kind of hold in your mind. So I noticed that someone had written Ginny's name on there. It one of our sort of founding members, who's not been with us for a long time, but we still hold her in our hearts. But also to put on there if there are people who you want to hold with care. Um, I have a really tiny little, what they call those little things that go round with prayers inside. Thank you. It's fairly obvious, isn't it? Prayer and wheel. Okay. So I have a really small prayer wheel at home, and you can take the top off it, and inside is lots and lots of prayers that have been written, and round. And when you spin the prayer wheel, it's a kind of invitation to kind of like these prayers going out into the world. And I often sort of, as I'm doing a walking in our walking meditation, I often imagine we're like that bell, we're like the inside of that prayer wheel, and we're just sort of sending all of these prayers out into the world for all these people we hold with care, including ourselves. So if you need to, you can always put your own name on the altar. If, if you're in need of some TLC, then please feel that we are part of. Nobody is separate. So that's the invitation. And I often when these talks start, people say, and I always feel it's a little bit like the Oscars. I want to thank my teachers, but there's a really, for me, it feels like a real thing. It's like I really do want to thank all the people who I have learned from, who are many and wondrous, and so it feels like sitting here, you are part of something that is being passed on warm hand to warm hand. So it doesn't feel like a lonely place. It feels like a place that's supported by all the people that have gone before in their practice. And it's very easy in our practice to sort of think that somewhere or other there are proper Buddhists and proper practitioners, and we're just the schmucks who do a kind of slightly half-assed job of it. Um, and um, and and it really feels very real to me that every single person who practices is part of what we do and what we practice. So for 2,000 years, people have been sitting, feeling inadequate. Sitting thinking, oh God, I'm thinking about the laundry again, or um, like this thing belongs to someone else. This thing is something in the future. And I want to thank you sincerely for your practice, because you and me and all of the people we've learned from are an intrinsic part of this. The Dharma exists in every single one of us, and we all practice. So I really do feel touched by that sense of we're all offering what we can offer. And when we were thinking about this talk, it was kind of on the back of, it was sort of, I don't know, late December, early January, something like that. And there was a sense of New Year and resolutions and all of those things that are terrible. Um, so, but it sort of chimed for me with this idea of how do we set an intention? How do we set something with as much agency as we have in our lives, which is very little, but how do we set that kind of intention? So Suzuki Roshi used this quote, with this phrase. He talked about our inmost request, our inmost request. And I found it really encouraging myself to reframe it slightly as the inmost request, because there's something about it being almost like your inmost request, which makes it a thing for you to do. It's both a thing for you to do and a thing for you to find. Like you have to become sort of some inner Sherlock. Where is this inmost request? Um, you've got to hunt it down, you've got to find it, and it's a thing. It's a thing. And it's a thing that belongs to you. And when I frame it for myself as the inmost request, it feels much less personal. It feels like, what is it that can emerge through me into life? So one of the ways that I've kind of found of thinking about that is thinking about it much more, so it's not a project. We're so we're so unbelievably good and stupid at turning anything into a self-improvement project. Just polish the thing a bit more, just practice a little bit more. But it's almost like, how does life want to come through me? And so I often think of it much more as, what do I have to offer? The inmost request is not what am I going to get? Not even kind of quite what am I going to do? But at this moment in time, what can I offer? And that's, I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's pretty much a movable feast for me. My resources fluctuate, my capacity fluctuates, what I can focus on and do fluctuates. So I'm kind of really interested in that. What am I resourced to offer in this moment? And recently some of us were listening to a talk by Cohen Franz, and he was talking about how even Superman takes breaks. There's something about, even if you had all the power in the world, you can't do everything. And so there's something for me about the inmost request kind of finding a way to align itself with the limited. What do we have to offer? What are our resources? And the paradox that we chant, the undoable vows, I'm going to free everybody. I'm going to walk through every Dharma gate. I'm going to sort of crush all delusion, and I'm going to be like the Buddha. And it's like, yes, and maybe not right now. But that's the paradox for me, is finding a way to move from small mind, I'm going to do this, to actually big mind. This is what life wants us to do. It's not about our personal stuff. This is what life wants us to do. Suzuki Roshi said, when you see one leaf falling, you may say, oh, autumn is here. One leaf is not just one leaf. It means the whole autumn. Have you already understood the all-pervading power of your practice? Your practice covers everything. The intention, the vow, is what you're making. It covers everything. And he said, our inmost nature wants some medium, some way to express and realize itself. So the inmost request is an expression of our inmost nature. It's not an expression of our conditioned self. Most of the time we live as though our worlds are expressions of our conditioned self. You know, this is who I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do, rather than how does life want to live through me? Suzuki Roshi went on to say, we answer this inmost request through our rules, and after Patriarch shows us his true mind. I had a little problem with that sentence. So I did a little rough translation in my head, which means the Dharma, the way. It was expressed by someone coming from a particular culture. In this way, we will have an accurate, deep understanding of practice. And we must just have more experience of practice. You must put confidence in the big mind which is always with you. You should be able to appreciate things as an expression of big mind. And this is more than faith. This is the ultimate truth which you cannot reject. Go on, give it a go. I'm sure you will. Whether it is difficult or easy to practice, difficult or easy to understand, you can only practice it. So conditioned mind longs to kind of grasp it, get hold of it, understand it. And we live with the paradox that big mind can only be understood through small mind. So there we are with our small minds, trying to understand the ineffable. So that's what we're going to do. And practice is how we do that. And for me, the delight and gift of thinking of a talk and about a talk is that the kind of theme sort of rolls round inside me. It always feels like a real gift, because it's like it sits on what I think of as my back burner, of which there are several. And it's kind of chunnering away to itself about, well, you know, what does that mean? So it's a sort of really great invitation to just hold it in my mind. And so I've been thinking about what's the inmost request for me. And as many of you will have heard, because it's tediously familiar, one of my kind of mantras for the last few years has been, I'm doing my best, and sometimes it's not very good, and that's okay. And I think I've needed this kind of self-support, because in my life, doing, supporting family and friends, my work, Sangha, my own creative impulses to write and paint and garden and, to be honest, watch quite a lot of TV. And, be in nature and looking at my own body as I age, as I have grandchildren and a great-grandchild, and, somewhere swirling round in this pot of need and duty and desire and capacity, something is always falling off the bloody table. Some ball is always dropping. I cannot do all the things that I would like to do as well as I would like to do them all the time. And that just feels really true. And there's been something about sitting with that as my truth. So I did used to think, so it's been about, my practice has been about embracing vulnerability and the fact that however strong my willpower is, I cannot do everything. And that has been a pretty constant delusion for me. And it's this practice has been about allowing me to sit with that delusion that I can do everything. Yeah, I'm checking. I still like that idea. But as I've been sitting with it, I think my inmost request at this moment is to show up as much as I can. Offer as much presence as I can. And be with something as fully as I can, knowing that at times fullness is a little sparse, and that this showing up is not related to success or failure. If I can unhook from something being good enough or bad enough or marvelous or terrible, I can kind of give myself permission to just show up. And that feels like that's kind of it. That's probably my inmost request at this point. Joan Sutherland says, what does it mean for each of us to be wholeheartedly part of this world? And I've heard Flint many times talk about wholehearted effort. And I sort of feel like I'm beginning to get a sense of what that means, that wholehearted effort regardless. And there's a full stop at the end of that. Wholehearted effort regardless. What does it mean for each of us to be wholeheartedly part of the world? How do we fall willingly? How do we fall willingly into the frightened, blasted, beautiful, tender world just as it is? I want to fall willingly and keep finding out what that means. Instagram is a wonderful Dharma tool for me. It just pops up the most extraordinary things. It's really lovely. And I heard Tom Waits reading a beautiful poem by Charles Bukowski, who some of you may know, but he was a kind of beat poet, and his poetry and writing and art was really aimed at what's the kind of soft white underbelly of America. He was particularly interested in writing to and about those people who would really be on the margins, people who many would consider unsuccessful. So junkies and hookers and the unhoused and anybody who was marginalized. So this poem, and I wanted to give that background because this poem sounds like it could be written not for those people. So this poem is called The Laughing Heart. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is a light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them, take them. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life, sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you. The gods wait to delight in you. And that last line for me is really echoed by things I've heard Flint and others say, and something that really caught me at one time, which was all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas across time and space are waiting for you. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas across time and space are waiting for you. So if we can start to have faith that just by following the practice and being with ourselves with curiosity, compassion, that which is already and always available to us is available to us. And that availability is not dependent on us getting it right. It's just dependent on putting ourselves in the way of things. Suzuki Roshi went on to say, priest or layman is not the point. To find yourself as someone who is doing something is the point. To resume your actual being through practice. To resume the you which was always with everything, with Buddha, which is fully supported by everything. Right now! He was very keen. Right now! You may say this is impossible, but it is possible. Even in one moment you can do it. It is possible in this moment, right now, for every single person. If you have this strong confidence in your big mind, you are already a Buddhist in the true sense, even though you do not attain enlightenment. And anyway, as Flint has said, there's no such thing as an enlightened person. There's only enlightened activity. There's what we do in the world. What we actually do, how we live, in our delusion, right now. So even in this moment, I'm really curious. What is the inmost request of your boundless mind and heart? What's an expression of your Buddha nature? And Suzuki Roshi again points out the very ordinariness of this. You know, many of us do have a sort of perfect model of how we're going to be, you know, when we're more awake, when we're more enlightened. It's going to look different than this. This is exactly how it's going to look. This and this and this is going to look no different. So, I've got a whole lot of stuff there, but what I really wanted to talk about was I was listening to a podcast by a guy who'd never heard of Croc before called Tyler Knott Gregson. And he talked about an episode from Doctor Who called The Beast Below. And as a bit of a nerd, I really fell in love with that. So a very quick précis of the plot of The Beast Below is a star whale, a star creature, the very last of its kind, happens to be swimming past Earth as a huge apocalypse happens. And it hears the cries of the children as the land starts falling apart. And it chooses to take London on its back because it cannot bear to hear the cries of the children. And it starts swimming with them on its back. But over time, the human inhabitants forget that the star whale rescued them. And they forget that they're there at the mercy of this animal, and they chain it up, and they start torturing it to produce electricity and to keep swimming, because they believe they have to harness this gift to make themselves safe. And now the humans think they live on Starship Earth, and they're endlessly forgetting the nature of their rescuer, the ground of their being. And every time there's a new Prime Minister, or whatever they're calling them, they're given two big buttons. One says abdicate, and the other says forget. And over time, the only way this community think they can carry on living is to keep pressing the forget button. Does this sound familiar to anybody? How do you keep your little starship alive? What do you do to keep going in a world where you don't necessarily feel safe or feel like that you are supported by the ground of your being? How many times do we press forget? But Amy Pond, and the wonderful Karen Gillan, I think, it's an episode from 2010. She's the doctor's companion, and the doctor thinks he has to make this choice between removing the animal's sentience so that it's no longer feeling tortured, or giving up and letting all the inhabitants die. That's what he thinks he's going to have to do. But Amy Pond recognises that the star beast, the beast underneath, is kind. And actually it only ever wanted to save the people. It was never needing to be corralled and tortured. She knows that it wants to do what it's doing. So it doesn't want to carry on listening to the cries of the children, so as it had from the outset. So she gets the current Prime Minister to press the abdicate button, not the forget button. And they realise when they abdicate that they are still free, that this star whale still wants to support them, and they are sailing on through space with the cooperation of this animal that they have kept chained and tortured for centuries. And Amy Pond says, amazing, don't you think, the star whale? All that pain and misery and loneliness, and it just made it kind. It just made it kind. It didn't make it kind, It was always kind. And when we say vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction, for many of us, it can be incredibly hard to see the world as a formless field of benefaction. It just feels like something we have to kind of lash and make it keep going to support us. But what happens if we press abdicate? What happens if we think we are always and already supported? That our unconditioned nature is kindness, is love. We do not want to hear the cries of the children. We are compassion, living through the world. The inmost request of the whale was to be kind, to keep being kind, even though those around it are not. So here we are. Perhaps we're riding on the back of the last star whale. That's an intriguing possibility, isn't it? And how do we live a life of gratitude? How do we stay awake? How do we stop pressing forget? How do we start pressing abdicate, surrender, faith? I don't know what words will work for you, but how do you let go of this sense that it's all up to you and that enlightenment is a thing you do? Again, Joan Halifax talks about being fetchable, and I think our practice is what makes us fetchable. But even the very word fetchable indicates that something wants to fetch us. Something is taking us home. Something wants to take us home. And however you frame that to yourself, the ineffable mystery, boundless mind, Dharma, Buddha nature. It's like, what's it like if you allow a little bit of faith that there is that ground of being? So one of the things that I wanted to sort of finish with is this. You have on your sheet something called Bodhisattva's Vow by Tori Zenji. And we're going to say it together. And this is a kind of version of Tori Zenji's Inmost request. And one of the things that really struck me when I was reading this is there's a part of it where he says, even though they be fools, be warm and compassionate towards them. And if by any chance they should turn against us, become sworn enemies and persecute us, you should sincerely bow down with humble language in the reverent understanding that they are the merciful messengers of the Awakened One, who use devices to emancipate us from blind tendencies produced and accumulated upon ourselves by our own egotistic delusion and attachment. So, yeah, it's quite a thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to say it together, and this is someone else's inmost request. And as we're saying it together, maybe you might have rolling around on your back burner. What is it I want to offer? What is my inmost request? What will lead me towards liberation, towards awakening, knowing that it will look just like this? It will, and I'm sorry if this is disappointing news, continue to look exactly like you. Okay, so shall we say it together? Bodhisattva's Vow, Tori Zenji. When I, a student of the way, look at the real form of the universe, all is the never-failing manifestation of the mysterious truth of the awakened life. In any event, in any moment, and in any place, None can be other than the marvellous revelation of its glorious light. This realization made our teachers extend tender care with respectful hearts, even to such beings as birds and beasts. This realization teaches us that our daily food, drink, clothes, and protections of life are the warm flesh and blood, the merciful incarnation of the awakened one. Who can be ungrateful or not respectful, even to senseless things, not to speak of humans? Even though they may be fools, be warm and compassionate toward them. If by any chance they should turn against us, become sworn enemies and persecute us, we should sincerely bow down with humble language in the reverent understanding that they are the merciful messengers of the awakened one, who use devices to emancipate us from blind tendencies produced and accumulated upon ourselves by our own egoistic delusion and attachment through countless cycles of space and time. Then on each moment's flash of our thought there will grow a lotus flower, and on each lotus flower will be revealed perfection, unceasingly manifest as our life, just as it is, right here and right now. May extend this mind to all beings, so that we and the world together may attain maturity in the wisdom of the awakened way. So let us sit together, attaining maturity in the awakened way, just by sitting together with our practice.